Just a couple quick things here. Want to mention that Bob Dunn, our water superintendent, who's worked for the city for the past 24 years, is retiring this Friday. I want to thank him for his many years of service and his good work. Also want to thank the people involved in the Frozen River Film Festival from last weekend, all the volunteers and the staff and everybody. I was able to take in quite a bit of it, and it's a wonderful event. It brings people in from all over, and a lot of great documentary films. And I call it the Open River Film Festival because of the warm weather, but it really was a great event for the city, and just a very successful event, and I want to say thank you. And also just remind all the council members, we get occasionally complaints from people that we're not speaking into the microphone. So if you make sure your mics are aimed at you, that would be great. And I think the audience, the large audience out there, will appreciate hearing what we have to say. So that's all I have. I'll ask the city manager if he has anything.
Just a couple things, Your Honor. I want to echo your kudos to the Frozen River Film Festival. It's a wonderful event for this community and a great celebration of that art. And also want to let folks know that Matt Fluharty has opened Outpost and is going to be a wonderful addition not only to downtown Winona but to the entire community. So we're really wishing him well as he moves forward. That's all.
Okay. Roll call.
Mayor Peterson.
Here.
Councilman Thurley.
Here.
Craig.
Here.
Alexander. Here. Iden. Here. Wojciechowski.
Here.
Scholmeyer.
Here.
Under the petitions, requests, and communications, item 3.1 is the Westfield Golf Club sublease agreement.
I'd make a motion to amend the original agreement allowing for a sublease of the restaurant.
Second. Motion by Michelle and seconded by Jerry to approve the sublease agreement with Westfield. Any discussion? George?
If they're here, can they tell us anything what they have planned, or?
Are the restaurant owners here? You can come up to the microphone, state your name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Vinny. I'm the owner of Winona Family Restaurant now. We're coming from a family owning a lot of restaurants on the Wisconsin side. Been working in this business for many, many years. We moved from Alaska, and one day just sitting in my restaurant at Winona Family Restaurant, they told me the Westfield, it's doing a sublease it or just give it to somebody. And I've been here like 3 years now with my wife and my 3 kids. I saw it, they didn't have any Italian restaurant in town, which I'm planning to be there, like same type of Olive Garden style, like steak and pastas, bread, all you can eat, salads. We're gonna be daytime open for the golfers too, which we're gonna have sliders, hamburgers, and all that stuff. Any question? Anything? Yes, sir.
When do you think you'll open?
When you start remodeling, always when you take things out, it comes another thing and another thing, which we just redid the bar now. We painting inside. March 1st, I'm planning to open it. We have the Motorsports. They've been there for 40 years, 30 years. They've been coming and keeping their events. After that, we're gonna plan like maybe 4 or 5 days. I'm hoping by March 7th to be open, keep on open. So it's a big remodeling going on there.
Sounds ambitious. Al?
One quick question. Are you still going to have events at the Westfield?
We're gonna have
restaurant?
events, and we're gonna have a small party room, like for people that wanna come there and, meetings and celebrate birthdays and all that. But it's gonna be Italian restaurant too, so we're gonna divide it there,
Oh.
Yeah, so even weddings, if they're like 150 and up, we can have those things.
Good.
Do you have any intention of catering at all?
When it comes to food, anything.
Anything else?
Good answer.
Well, thank you, and good luck with your
Thank you,
restaurant.
guys.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Good luck.
If there aren't any other questions, we have a motion and a second. We'll vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries.
Item 3.2 is the application for the on-sale intoxicating liquor licenses for the Westfield Italian Steak and Pasta.
Move
Make-
to approve.
Second.
Motion by Jerry and seconded by Michelle to approve a liquor license for the restaurant we just heard about. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Carries.
Item 3.3 is the request for temporary on-sale wine and malt liquor license for St. Mary's Church.
Move approval?
Second.
Motion by Michelle and seconded by Jerry to approve a temporary liquor license for St. Mary's Church for their Luck of the Irish Festival. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries.
Under unfinished business, item 4.1 is the Partners in Energy with Excel Memorandum of Understanding.
I would move to approve the memorandum of understanding.
Second.
Motion by Pam, seconded by Paul. John, would you like to come up and explain what this Partners in Energy program is?
Good evening. Partners in Energy is a program put on by Excel Energy. They accept about 5 communities every 6 months, and we were lucky enough to be accepted into this program. And what it does is they help us develop an energy action plan. We develop a committee of citizens, and basically it's to develop whatever the community decides is important for energy, like energy conservation, renewable energy. But the memorandum of understanding is included here. It's just saying we're going to work on that process with Excel, and they're going to provide support and data on energy use throughout the city.
Al?
Question on the details of this. It says something about has to be completed in 6 months.
Excel typically does 3 workshops in 6 months to really develop an energy action plan. So their timeline is to have that ready in 6 months. They do much of the writing and the work. And actually following the energy action plan, there'll be another memorandum of understanding about implementing that plan. So I'll be back once we have that plan and basically on the next steps of how that would be implemented for the city.
And 6 months is a doable timeframe?
Yeah, it should be. Yep. And so we'll hopefully have 4 meetings, kind of by the early summer, and then they'll put together an energy action plan. And we'll be working on that throughout the process as well. So should be very possible.
And this is working with one of our city committees, right?
My intention was to work through the Citizens Environmental Quality Committee. They seem to be a natural fit. Obviously, we'll be in communication with planning and other committees and other committees and staff departments.
Good, thank you.
Any other questions? Not, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries.
Under new business, item 5.1 is the city sanitary sewer revenue bond sale.
Mary, you're on.
Mayor and council, I have good news with 2 parts of this. First of all, Moody's Investors Service reassigned our excellent bond rating of a AA1, and then they cited some strengths that they really look at, that we have a diversified tax base, and that we have not had a deterioration of reserves, and also that we have rapid payback of our debt. And then they also cite challenges, and always on the list is the question on available land for future development. The large amount that we receive from local government aid would be on there. And if there'd be any deterioration of our reserves, that would be looked at as a red flag. And then they also cite that our overall wealth factor in the community statistically is below the state average. But then they do qualify it that a third of our population are students. So then it's not comparing to other cities because of our large population of students. So that was the first thing of good news. And then the second item is we had the bond sale this morning, and we had 8 bidders. And that is a good number. And the rate is a 2.137 is the lowest rate. And that's also a very good rate. So that's what you have for you for approving this evening is the bond sale. And this, I'll just refresh, remember, this is for the sanitary sewer, and it's for improvements. And these are, this and some of the reserves in the sanitary sewer will fund improvements for the next 3 years. They have some very large projects that we talked about last summer during budget time. And now this is what we talked about last summer, that we're actually selling the bond now.
Okay. Questions for Mary? George?
Yeah, Keith, could you just refresh us on what these major projects will be?
Mayor and Council, there's a number of projects, including 3 of the lift stations, doing some work in those, some clarifier work, digester work, in addition to the office building area and some storage area. So there's a number of projects. I think there's some beyond that as well, but those are some of them.
The millions get spent pretty fast at the lift stations, right?
And all those projects, they add up.
Any other questions? I don't think we have a motion, do we?
No.
We need a motion?
I'd make a motion to approve the attached resolution and to continue the contract with Springstead.
I would
Second.
second that.
Okay, I heard the motion from Michelle and a second from Pam. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those, oh, I'm sorry.
When would these projects begin, Keith?
We'll have to get the engineers on board. We have been talking to one of the companies on the chlorine disinfection at the end of the process. So we'll be starting this summer.
Okay.
And the project list is in your packet.
Okay.
Anything else? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries.
Item 5.2 is the Green Step City certification.
Well, ask John to come back up and tell us a little bit about that.
Mayor and Council, the Green Step Cities program is a program through the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. And what it does is it provides a framework for implementing sustainability and kind of green actions. And so they have a list of 29 best practices that cities and communities can take on. Currently, there are 111 communities throughout Minnesota that are part of this program. About 40% of the population, actually. I was surprised to hear that number. And some of the things that I really like about this program is that it's completely voluntary and it's free. So we can take on the actions that we want and do them at our own pace and basically get free assistance from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency and some of their partners on implementing these steps. So it's a great technical assistance program for them to help us, and really it is very much up to us to choose what we want to do and at our own pace. So if included in your packet is a sample resolution, once we were to pass that resolution, we would become a step one city. And based on our previous actions and some of the steps we've already taken, like historic preservation ordinances and some of our other work with like a tree inventory, we would automatically qualify as a step 2 city. Or we'd have to submit some forms to the MPCA, but we would qualify as a step 2 city. And one of the major benefits of joining this program would be branding, to have that certification, but also to get grant funding in the future. There's specific funding available through the Green Step Cities program, and also makes it easier to apply for grants through the MPCA, or should facilitate getting grants from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. Happy to answer any questions. There are a lot of different best practice steps that we can take, and I think we would probably provide a report before we start rolling, if we were joined.
Did I hear you say historic preservation ordinance?
That is one of the best practices, is
Okay.
maintaining, maintaining our buildings and basically doing what would be considered smart growth.
Al?
I have a question. Seems like every time you're up here, I have a question. On the resolution before us, or soon to be before us, one of the steps is to grant the Green Step Program Building Advisor read-only access to the city's B3 benchmarking database. Can you explain to me and perhaps rest of council what the city's B3 benchmarking database is?
Sure. So the B3 database is a statewide database of principally public buildings, some schools, mostly cities, and it's recording energy use through through city buildings. Right now, the city has an active B3 account. Most of the data is from 2007, 2008, from the McKinstry performance contract. But it's actually a pretty useful tool to see how our buildings are comparing to others, to see if we're using much more energy comparatively to our peers. And so by granting access, that just allows them to see what our numbers are, so they can help us analyze them. But right now, also, all our data on B3 is public, so it's not really giving them anything that they couldn't really get right away, but it does give them the ability to log in and download that data, I think, more readily. I think that's what they're hoping to have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would move to approve the attached resolution.
I'll second.
I've heard a motion from Pam, a second from Paul. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries.
Item 5.3 is the Transit Service Expansion Grant Application. This is a new grant fund for the next 2 years. It's 100% of the gross operating costs and 100% capital funds for new buses. This is an add-on grant to our existing operating grant through MnDOT, and we're requesting a pilot project to do dial-a-ride in the city of Winona.
I'd make a motion to adopt the attached resolution.
I'd second that.
Motion by Michelle and seconded by Pam. Do you want to explain the Dial-A-Ride program?
Sure. Currently, we operate on a deviated route system where there are published routes that we will go off the route for an additional fee, but it's a limited distance that the buses will go off the route. A Dial-A-Ride is a little bit like a taxi service where you call and schedule a ride, and it will pick you up from your home and take you to your destination. There are criteria on which people qualify, how far you have to be off an existing route to use it, and the fares would be a little bit different. But we would operate the Dial-A-Ride the same hours and days of service as our regular system. So right now, that would be Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., and Saturday, 9 to 5.
Is there information on our city website about the Dial-A-Ride program?
No, we would wait and see if we get the grant, and then we would do a series of information sessions and outreach with different community groups, senior center, DAC, ORC.
So this is completely new?
Yes.
The Dial-A-Ride? Oh, I thought they deviated for people.
They'll deviate off the current routes, but only a limited distance.
Oh, okay.
So this would open up areas that are farther off the route than that distance.
Any other questions? Michelle?
I'm pleased about this, Monica. I hope we get the grant, but is there ever a chance that we would be able to use the Dial-A-Ride for non-service hours? Is that something that could be in our future? Because I think there's still many of us who recognize that there's individuals who work those odd shifts that can't get to and from work, and giving limited housing options in their work area. This is like a step in that direction from my perspective, but obviously if it ran on weekends or evenings, that would be more beneficial for the people who can't easily or readily get to a bus stop or work during hours where they run. You don't know.
It's a complicated response. Minnesota Department of Transportation has been doing a series of surveys and needs assessments, and they see a higher need for Sunday service throughout greater Minnesota than they do evening. And we had a lot of survey respondents and public meetings in southeastern Minnesota, and that was showing also. We can't use the buses outside of our management agreement with MnDOT, but if we feel we can do a subscription service for those hours that state and non-city money or funding, MinDOT may be open to that if it's funded not through
By-
the state.
Sure, okay, thank you.
And Al, you had something?
Yeah, you brought up Sunday service, that's one question. And also, just to thank you, and hopefully we'll get the grant, because I know I've had some constituents who have asked for the dial-a-ride service or something like it. So this is something I will support when the motion is before us. But what about this Sunday service? Because I know one of the things, the Saturday service has been well-received, and people have always said, well, why don't you run on Sunday as well?
So the answer to that is, I think the dial ride has a higher priority than adding Sunday.
You know, it's all during the
And
6 days, you know.
I think there's a good rate of success in getting this grant. And because it is for 2 years, they cover 100% of the operating and capital costs. After that time, it goes to 80%. So hopefully, in that 2 years, we build up enough ridership that the fares we collect would cover that 20% match.
Mhm. And what about the possibility of Sunday I mean, you answered it with a survey, but how can we move forward in looking at getting Sunday service for transportation here?
So again, it's reliance on the state grant money. They're covering 80% of the operating costs. I did request Sunday in the 2017, and it was not funded. But MnDOT's guidance, they think dial-a-ride would have a higher priority. So if it's funded, maybe in future years, we can again request Sunday.
And I'm sure you're well aware that it's something people would like to see.
Right.
Thank you.
George?
You know, it certainly is a good program, you know, coming off the route, but how would this affect our private cab companies for business? Would they be taking any business from a private cab that perhaps goes down 2 blocks or 3 blocks, whatever? I mean, you know, just a thought. You know, cabs run Saturday and Sunday and around the clock.
Would this have any effect on the current schedule, their ability to keep to a schedule?
For the regular routes?
Right.
Right, we would not change the regular routes or the schedule. That would stay the same. This would augment
Be
that
dedicated
service.
to that, okay. Paul?
Class 400 bus is what, and is that 158,000 each, or is that for 2?
The 158 would be for 2 vehicles. Class 400 would be a little bit smaller than what we are currently operating on our regular routes. It would be similar to what you see DAC and ORC.
And didn't you mention, though, that in answer to George's question, that there were some requirements to use the dial-a-ride? Or
Right.
qualifications
So we
anyway?
haven't set up the program yet,
Okay.
but it depends on how you set it up. One of the guidance from MnDOT is that you say you have to live outside of the deviation area. So if you're within 4 blocks of an existing route, you would have to ride the regular routes. That's one way you could set it up. Or you could say, the primary focus is for handicap to ride the dial-a-ride. All of our vehicles, whether it's on the regular routes or the dial-a-ride, they're all handicap accessible, have the wheelchair lift.
Right.
Those are questions we haven't answered yet.
Okay. Good, thank you.
Anything else?
So when would we hear? I know that the application is due March 3rd, but when would we hear back?
They're planning to try and get this done in a short turnaround, so they're hoping to have a response back to us by April 1st, and they would like us to implement it yet this summer.
Great.
If it is funded, we would use one of our existing fleet buses, a reserve, to run it initially, and then purchase, because the purchase of a bus takes 4 or 5 months from the time you've ordered, so that's a lengthy process.
Anything else? Do we have a motion? We do, okay. Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries.
And item 5.4, the Masonic Temple drops.
Chad?
Mayor and council, would like to start out by apologizing for any confusion on your summary of requested action. Councilman Borjakowski pointed out to me today that it appears that the bottom or page 2 of the item was cut off in the printing. However, since I signed these, I take full responsibility for that error. And so I understand it also may have led to some confusion because the last paragraph that's in your packet notes that there should be no action is required tonight. That's on the rigging system. And so what I think I'd prefer to do, if it's okay with you, is walk through the summary of requested action. And the bottom paragraph that was cut off on page 2 is simply the language for your motion tonight, if you so choose. So at the last council meeting, the council accepted option D for the rigging system that was outlined in the study with Miller Dunwoody. An amendment was added to have a choice between 0 to 10 drops be considered. And again, that motion passed and carried. Immediately following the council meeting that evening, city staff received a proposal to purchase the drops. The following morning, Tuesday the 7th, there was an additional offer by the same individual that was forwarded on to council. What I mean by additional is additional information was in the proposal that was forwarded on to council. Obviously, not having that information last Monday night, we feel it's important that we bring the issue back to council. Staff is proposing that the city place the historic drop collection and correlating scenic side pieces up for public auction. Again, tonight, you're not taking any action as it relates to costs associated with the rigging system. So, not to go through the confusion of option A, B, C, D, E, that, if, depending upon what you decide tonight, that comes back at the next council meeting when we talk about the bond sale and as it relates to the $1.8 million for Masonic Temple. Okay, so there is no action regarding the rigging system tonight. The paragraph that was cut out simply would have stated that if council concurs, a motion to declare the Masonic Temple drops surplus and sell them in accordance with our ordinance at public auction. And with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to field them.
Well, I guess I have a question. I guess the motion 2 weeks ago was to use up to 10 drops, and a motion to accept option D. But in effect, what we were probably saying was option C, it sounds like, if we wanted to use up to 10 drops. Is that correct?
If you decide tonight that you would like to have any number between 0 and 10, what's best for the drops and what's best for the theater space, if that number is 10, or really up to 10, is option C of the rigging system. It does add, as we mentioned, it does add cost, roughly $60,000 to accommodate the dedicated line sets. But again, that's what we would bring back at the next, if you choose to keep drops tonight, we would bring back that information at the next meeting. But yes, C is, if you keep 10 drops, C is the best rigging option.
I just want to be clear. Okay. Jerry, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I'm just curious. Last time there was somewhat of a time crunch on it because Mr. Slaggy was looking for an answer so he could start his project. And if we feel that Mr. Slaggy has officially walked away and is not going to return, is there is this time sensitive? Because the more we look at it, the more confusing it gets. We're getting a tremendous amount of input from people. And ask the question, is this time sensitive to the best of your knowledge? Last time it was.
Mayor and council, that's correct. We felt it was time sensitive based on Hurry Back Productions' proposal,
Yes.
1. 2, it's time sensitive if the council would choose to use the proceeds from the bond sale, the 1.8 million that we've discussed at the budget meetings this past summer, in relationship to a rigging system. Meaning if you want to use the 1.8 million to improve the rigging system with this bond sale, then it's time sensitive because we're bringing that item back next council meeting. At the budget meetings in the summer, we also talked, and again, this is in relationship to what the proposal was in front of us. We talked about upgrading the HVAC system at the Masonic Temple and doing electrical upgrades. If that's the route that we want to choose with this building, then I would say it's not necessarily time sensitive that there's a decision tonight. However, this is a complicated issue because electrical upgrades also are correlated to the rigging system. And the electrical upgrades do have, again, like I said, a correlation to whether we choose option C or D. Of course, option C and D relate to the number of drops. So I guess we feel it's time sensitive. But again, obviously, it's based on your decision.
Okay, go ahead, and then I have a question.
But without a rigging system, what is the potential use of that space? I mean, they couldn't really use it for theater. What would happen in there if we chose to take the bond and use it on something else in the building? You know what I mean? Like, how would a theater operate with no rigging system for curtains or drops or screens or?
Mayor and council, the space would still be used the way it really is currently being used or the way it was used shortly after the rigging system, to use a word, failed. Certainly there could be performances in the space. There's nothing above the stage. The rigging system is not an imminent threat, or I would even say a threat from a safety standpoint. The stage is still lit. I mean, I think it still can be used. As a matter of fact, we have users requesting the space in April. Primarily Midwest Music Fest will use the space. The Masons have a large event in April. TDM requested some time in April. So again, in short,
It's usable.
Usable in the condition right before or right shortly after the rigging system failed.
Chad, I understand, the need for making decisions about the rigging system because of the electrical and, how many drops if we want to. Seems to me it comes down to either do we want some drops kept or we don't want any drops at all. But let's say we want, let's say the number 0. Why do we need to make a decision about selling them tonight? If the number is 0, what's the need to decide that? What if the number is 10? What if it's 15? Why do we need to decide that we're going to sell all the rest of them when it seems to me they're properly being stored and there's a kind of a window on that. There's a couple of years, 2 or 3 years left where they seem to be okay to be stored. I'm just wondering why we need to decide to sell them.
You have an offer to purchase the collection, so we brought that forward. If you don't
it's
want to decide
$1,000,
to sell them,
so-
then you certainly can take that action not to sell them.
$1
It's
million
going to have an
dollars.
impact on, then with this bond sale, then we wouldn't, guess staff wouldn't recommend I wouldn't recommend as a staff to council that we upgrade the rigging system with the $1.8 million bond sale because we don't know if it's 0, 10, 25, 45, 62. Then we would proceed, the recommendation would proceed with HVAC and another item in the HSR, I guess, would be the prudent thing to do if you want to continue with renovating the building.
It would seem to me that the decision that's before the council is, do we want to keep any drops, and if so, how many? And that decision needs to be made. Not necessarily so much do we need to sell them, but what do we want to do with the drops?
And Mayor and Council, I fully understand what you're asking. I think that we tried to illustrate this at the last pre-council, and certainly through the meetings and dialogue of the rigging system is the drops, a decision on the drops is inevitable. We've known for years that we're going to have to, once they came down and were put in storage, we knew that we would have to make a decision on what are we going to do with these drops, restore them, permanent storage, sell them, again, put all 97 back up, put 0 up. That decision is not going away.
I think Paul had his hand up.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to postpone any sale of the drops until we decide at our next meeting on the options.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second? I'll ask that. I guess there dies for lack of a second. Michelle?
So I feel like we already made a decision. We made a decision to go with option D with 0 to 10 drops. What we're actually talking about tonight is, are we going to take the 0 to 10 out of that option and sell them, or more importantly, put them up for auction? It isn't a question, I think, of going back to look at other rigging options at this point, because the decision was already voted on and decided. What we really are trying to decide as a council is, are we going to keep 0 or some number up to 10? Unless we're going to go back and start all over again and reject the option that we just passed through. So what we should be talking to ourselves about is it more valuable to sell it as a whole collection to an individual who may be able to restore it, or hang 10, and I don't even know what'll happen to the other ones, because that's still a whole nother discussion about the 90+ thousand to put them into storage and then finding a place to store them long-term, which is not really a great solution from my perspective, because they're still not being seen, and maybe they can stay that way indefinitely, but what's the point? So I think we can't go back into what we talked about 2 weeks ago. We need to focus on what we already did and talk about what we're going to do now. Because I think Chad's right in what he's been saying all along. Do we want a historic museum, or do we want a community functional center? They're two different things. We can have the historic museum and theater, or we can have this other idea. And I'm leaning towards this other idea because we've already talked this out for years. We've talked this out. And even without Hurry Back, we have a more viable option for the community if we go with option D. It can be used for conferences, theater productions, musical productions, meetings, weddings. Any of that can happen there. But now we're going to go back in time and start talking about drops that we may not even be able to save or find the money to fund. So I don't want to go backwards. I don't want to go backwards.
George?
So you're saying 0 drops in what you
If I
just
make
said.
that motion, that would be, we want to put them up for sale. I mean, the decision tonight is, are we going to keep 0 or 10? Because we've already decided on that number. I don't think we're talking about 92 anymore unless we're rejecting the entire decision we just made, which I really hope we're not trying to talk about doing.
Now, this offer that, we had after the meeting last week, whatever that offer was, $1,000, $2,000, whatever, that offer, in a sense, is not valid because these have to be offered at a public sale, correct? Or
Correct.
auction, or however you want to put it?
Mayor and Council, that's correct. Per our ordinance, you'd have to declare them as surplus and then sell them at a public auction.
And we don't know what that, any idea what the value is? Is it 5,000, 10,000, 1,000?
Like I mentioned at the last meeting, we asked specifically the restorer that we've been working with on this project for well, the question was posed this way: is there a market for our drops and/or similar drops? And the response was that there's been 3 sales in the recent past, is I think how it was worded, anywhere from $1,000 to $25,000. And again, as you've heard me say before, with a lot of conditions on all of those sales. The condition of the drops, the number, the side pieces, the artist that was involved, all play a factor in the value.
Now, I had a chance to tour with Lee this morning. We went through there, and I mean, we see him in the boxes there. Now, they've been in the boxes for what, 3 years? And 5 is the maximum, or?
The restorer is recommending that they don't stay in longer than 5 years. So we've got roughly 2 years left.
That'd be 2 years left, so.
To Michelle's point, the remaining 87, for example, if you choose 10, if they're not going to be used, I wouldn't recommend using tax dollar to put them in permanent storage unless there was a plan for restoration. It's a high cost in my opinion, if you make a decision of 10, for example. So again, the restorer is saying, if you're going to use them and restore them, she would recommend that they not stay in their current state longer than 5 years.
Well, I don't disagree with you about that, because I think that we need to decide how many, if we're using any, how many we would want to use. And beyond that, I don't think we have the room or the proper kind of storage, and I think the expense of doing it doesn't warrant it. But I personally think that there is a number, and maybe it's the 10 that we talked about last time, that would continue to be used there and available to tell the history of the building, and to me, that's important. And, I won't support a motion that says sell all of them. I think we need to listen to some of the people that have been suggesting that we keep part of this for the community to use and appreciate. These are valuable assets that we have, and I don't think we should discard them. Once they're sold, they're gone forever, and I don't feel right about that. I mean, my DNA tells me, try to save things that are of historic value, and that's kicking in here. Al?
Thank you, Mayor. I concur with your reasoning on this, and I would like to make a motion that we place in auction all but 3 sets, so that would be a total of 15, I believe. And further, which of those sets to be not sold, the decision upon recommendation, the decision would be the council upon recommendation from our city's Fine Arts Commission.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that for discussion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. And the motion is to save 3 sets of
Right.
5, and I think you said the Fine Arts Commission would determine which of those sets to save?
And
Is
that would,
right?
the decision then would come back to council for approval or further discussion.
For our recommendation, okay.
Recommendation, yeah.
We'll go with Pam.
Yes, well, given that we at the last meeting decided on 0 to 10, I would like to amend the motion to reflect that decision last time, 0 to 10. Let's save 10, perhaps 3 sets or 2 sets, however it breaks out. But I think that 15 is too much space in that theater. And I think they're very special and they're very valuable, but I think we need to go with creating a more dynamic theatrical space, open space. So I would amend your motion to say, let's save 10.
Is there a second to the motion to amend?
I'll second it for, just so
Okay.
we can get it on the table, I guess,
All right.
even though it was my initial motion.
Now, Chad is eager to speak, so we'll let him.
Mayor and council, I just want to remind you that I understand your motion, but the number of drops depends on the scene that we choose. Some may have 4 that we would choose, some may have 5. Option C of the rigging system, without getting, again, into too much detail, it had 10 dedicated line sets. I think that we gave the example that you could have 3, 3, and 4. So
Yeah.
3, 3, and 4 would be 10. And that would save 3 scenes.
Okay.
Just, Paul?
So, last time at last meeting, I went along with option D based on the premise that we were gonna be in a partnership with Hurryback. And that is no longer happening. If that wasn't happening, I would have preferred option C. And many of the constituents that I've heard from also would have preferred option C. So that's kind of the base that I'm coming from when I'm looking at multi-purpose opportunities for the theater. And so I'm willing to go along with either the amended or the councilperson's Thurley's motion, because that's close to C.
Okay. Michelle?
Chad, I have a question. Let's say we go option D or C because we've now decided that we want to have tighter rigging for the 10 drops that we're going to save. How are the drops getting repaired? Do we have a plan for that yet? Do we have funding in place? Do we have a financial idea of, or what are we going to do with those drops? I mean, I'm guessing that if this is the route we take, we're still looking at a long haul for raising the funds to preserve, restore, and rehang.
Mayor and council, I believe, I don't have it in front of me, I'm sorry. I think the latest estimate that we have from the Restore was in 2010 dollars. We're estimating $1,000 per drop to restore, so.
7,000.
or, Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry, 7,000 per drop, which would be a total of, $70,000. Again, estimate, we could certainly get an official quote or quotes to do that. And again, there are many factors on, depending upon what scene we pick. Is it a cut drop? Is it a leg drop? Does it have theatrical netting? What's the condition of the drop? And so that price could change, but that's the best estimate I can give you.
Okay.
So
I
it's,
Go ahead.
oh, sorry. So it's 70,000 for the restoration estimated, and Miller Dunwoody provided the estimate of an additional 60,000 for the option C rigging system.
Personally, I think that, the restoration of these drops is probably the least of our concerns. I think it's a pretty simple legacy arts grant or a legacy grant that would likely be funded. In addition to the restorer that we heard those estimates from, we also have a local restorer, which I mentioned last meeting, that I think, could take a look at this and possibly provide an even better price, and certainly has the skills to do it. I wouldn't not do it because of the cost of the restoration. $70,000 is a relatively small legacy grant. Other questions? Okay, we need to vote on the amendment. And just to be clear, the amendment was to, would you read it back?
The amendment is for 10 drops.
For 10 drops. So we'll vote on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes. We need to go back to the original motion, I think. I don't know what the difference is going to be there.
You still gotta vote on it.
What?
Original motion will be 10, but we still gotta vote on it.
The original motion would be to auction
Oh, to
all
auction.
but the 10 drops, recommendation from Fine Arts Commission on which drops to save.
Okay. We ready to vote? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Carries 6-1.
Mayor and council, if I may, just two updates. Because I know that there has been some concern from the public. Just a reminder that the Fine Arts Commission is a public commission. They take input from everyone. So if individuals in the public have ideas about which drop should be saved, they can contact either our office or the chair of the Fine Arts Commission and make those recommendations. They certainly can be part of the meetings where those decisions are made. They're public meetings. We have notices out for those meetings, and so again, I think involving the Fine Arts Commission is a wise decision. Just wanted to reiterate that, again, they're a public commission, they take input. And then, just to follow up, we will bring back a recommendation then on March 6th for the $1.8 million bond sale on what items and what upgrades we should pursue with that $1.8 million. I just want to make sure that we're very clear to you tonight that the HSR spells out sort of the priorities, and that's how we will determine a recommendation to you. If you'd like to include the rigging system in the bond sale, we have that option. If you want to pull it out and fund that in 18 or a different funding source, we can. We'll try and make sure that we're clear about those recommendations. I just wanted to repeat that though tonight so that there's not confusion that what we approved tonight again was the rigging replacement. That's not what's happened. You did not take that action tonight. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Item 7.1 is council concerns.
Start with George.
Okay. I'd like to congratulate Bob Dunn on his retirement from the Water Department and look forward to Brett Bunky as the new Water Superintendent and welcome him on board. But congratulations to Bob and thank you to Bob for his years of service. Also with the Water Department, good work done by them on West Burns Valley Road. There was a water break and they worked on that, got it done quite quickly, and people were very, very well happy with the response of them. Last week, Thursday, was a very special day, speaking of history. Peerless Chain Company celebrated their 100th anniversary of being in business. In May 20th, there will be a citywide celebration celebrating that centennial. All now to Jack Craig. Congratulations to Jack on his promotion with the Lions organization. And also condolences to the family of Jean Frankard. Speaking of a Peerless Chain Company, Jean, her father was one of the founders of Peerless Chain 100 years ago. So condolences to her husband Jim, their children, and as they move on. And also, as we move on, we're talking about, the drops and this and that, the 1.8 million. I don't know what we're all going to do with the 1.8 million, but we will have a plan for it. Maybe we should just have some consideration of perhaps maybe just looking at perhaps selling the building. Thank you.
Well, you made up for 2 weeks ago, George. Paul?
Thank you. And I guess all I really have is this Friday is the Southeast Minnesota Western Wisconsin Regional Science and Engineering Fair at Winona State University, Crystal Commons, East Hall. Public viewing is open from 3 until 4, so that's open to everybody. It's free. And student researchers from throughout Southeast Minnesota will be coming. And so I want everybody to make sure that they pray for the weather to hold. So, thanks.
Pam?
Nothing for me tonight.
Michelle?
I'm good.
Jerry? Al?
I can't let it go just on that side of the table, you know.
Sure we can. He passes.
All right, no, I just wanted to,
That'll be the day.
last time the mayor mentioned coverage upcoming in our community from Channel 4 WCCO TV. And I thought they just did an outstanding job. They made a special effort to, I wasn't able to watch it live, to record it and play it back. And it was a great tribute, I think, to our efforts through the Park Rec and Chad and his staff and the Minnesota Climbers, Ice Climbers Association to get that ice facility going. And every time I look up at that bluff, I go, CCO is up there. And I keep seeing other vehicles down below and seeing people with all of the gear going up there and participating in that. So I'm happy to see their coverage and happy to see also that WCCO did a really good job, and I was happy to see them stop at Blado's as well. And then in December, we had a group of ambassadors travel from Winona, including the mayor and his wife and a lot of other people, to our sisters. And Michelle, yes, sorry. And you haven't been here that much, so I kind of, never, I'm just kidding. To our sister city, Japan, and a videographer from Winona, Harry Klein, went along and really put together a very nice video of that trip. And for those of you who would like to view it, who haven't done so already, it's available on YouTube. And you can go to YouTube and just enter Winona Ambassadors. And that should take you to the YouTube video and watch it. Very well done. Really, again, another program in our community that's been very successful over the years. And thank Harry Klein and everybody that went for those good results. And that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Under the consent agenda, there are two items: the approval of the minutes from February 6th and the final adoption for an ordinance for the mobile food concessions. Move approval.
Second.
Motion by Michelle and seconded by Al. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Mayor, I move we adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.